one because there you go. I don't know if everyone heard it. It's a recording in progress. So, while we're virtual, it feels a lot more present when you turn your camera on. Okay, so before we get started and go to our guest speaker, I'll just do a quick announcement on AB 717. This is a bill that was introduced recently, and we'll probably have questions on it. And we have some folks who will be able to answer a lot of things surrounding this. But I'll go ahead and read it. Assembly member Mark Stone from Monterey Bay has introduced legislation to require the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, to provide a California ID card or driver's license to every person released from state prison. And this is just a quote from him from the press release. If we do not provide formerly incarcerated people with access to necessary documents upon release, such as ID cards, then we're setting them up for failure. We must provide them with the necessary tools to reintegrate into the community, and a California ID card helps them tremendously. This will allow them to apply to jobs, rent an apartment, and open a bank account, all things that will help an individual become successful after release. So this is AB 717. Again, this is from Mark Stone. If you want to learn more about this, I welcome you to do some more research, but we'll be having an ongoing dialogue about this as we go. So I'm going to now introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Curtis Howard. So this is a nice picture that he went ahead and showed our group. So Curtis is here on the left, followed by Tasha Williamson, and then this is Amy Zamidio, all powerful advocates in the community. And this is his recent book that he published, Cellmates and Cellouts. And he's also the leader of a group called All of Us or None of Us, which is a prisoners' rights activist group. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to Mr. Curtis Howard.
All right. Thank you. It's cool being here. Can everybody hear me pretty good? Cool. It's cool being here, and the subject matter is something that has been a really big struggle of mine. It has been such a struggle that it caused me to continue down a spiraling path that I did not want to be in. I was a gang related person who went to prison with a gang mindset after being involved in gangs for many years. During the course of several periods of incarceration, I changed my mindset from gangs, and I changed a lot of my outlooks from a lot of different things that I had held on to that was a part of a problem and part of the stigma that was attached to people like me. When I transitioned from that mindset and decided to become productive with myself and in society, I found that it wasn't just about me changing my mindset for things to happen. Although I changed my mindset, I became homeless, which forced me into survival mode upon coming back into society. And we don't really make plans when we change our mindset. We feel like all of our problems are going to go away. So we say, okay, I'm no longer a gang member. So I'm not going to be hanging with the homies, not going to be packing any pistols. I'm not going to be on the corner. So we think that if we change this, I'm going to start being accountable. I'm going to start being responsible. I'm going to go in and report, to my agent when it's time to. No more criminal activities, So we are a lot of times under the impression that it's going to end everything for us because we feel like everything is on us. So what happened to me is I was dropped off after 10 years of incarceration. I was dropped off at the Greyhound bus station in downtown San Diego, homeless. All I knew that I had to do was report to the parole agent. You have 24 hours to report, or they will put a warrant out for your arrest. So that's all they really care about, is that you report to them to make their job easier. All the parole agent wants for you to do is come in and make that initial report. He wants to take pictures of all your tattoos, take your shirt off, take pictures of your body and of your, it's like a humiliating process that you go through, taking pictures at all different angles, shirts. If you got tattoos anywhere on your legs or whatever, take off your pants, and drug test and everything. But if you say you don't have anywhere to live, they could care less. Just give us those pictures, give us those drug tests, get out of here. Good luck to you on finding housing. Let me look and check on some things for you, see if we can get you in somewhere. And that's it. So I came back homeless, and I realized that this was an entirely different challenge for me. And for the next 20 years, after changing my mindset, after saying no more gangs, after saying no more drugs, after doing all of that, for the next 20 years, I still got in trouble as a direct result of being homeless, of being hungry and going and, to where I've had to go and shoplift to get something to eat, and to where I've been involved in survival mode violence, of being in the melting pot with the homeless people and in the homeless community, where people are doing drugs and drinking and whatnot, and where it's like a dog eat dog and survival of the fittest type world. And it's kind of like prison, where you have to put on a certain face and know and be mindful of your surroundings at all times. So being homeless is the same thing. It requires me to be in a survival mode and a survival mindset, to where I put up this shield, to where I'm not going to smile much, to where I'm not going to play around too much here, because we're somewhere where I have to have this outer edge in order to survive. So for 20 years, homelessness was a problem that sent me back several times. Parole violations for not checking in because I didn't have any way to get there. Even if I did, I was probably too tired to go, you know, to where when you get on survival mode, you really don't care about anything else. Now your responsibilities of doing your probation and parole things, or reporting on time and showing up for this and coming in taking your drug tests and all that, it doesn't matter anymore. It becomes a thing to where everything is revolves around you now and what you have to do for yourself, and you become less caring of what this agent needs to see you for. To hell with what he needs to see me for. He didn't need to see me last night when I needed a meal. Now he wants me to come and go all the way across town to see him. And for 20 years, I bounced in and out of different jobs. And even though at times I rented a room somewhere, it still wasn't stable. I still felt like at any time my world could give. I've been in places where I was living for a month where they've came and told me, hey, we got to let you go. We're getting ready to sell the house, or have a family member moving back in that room that you're in. And the program's ending right now. We don't have funds no more. Every situation that I did manage to get in was very unstable, and it never allowed me to set goals for my life. Nothing in my life was planned for more than a day or two, because I was not allowed to make goals, because my life didn't have a tomorrow. I lived for today. So goals were never set. And for about 20 years, it was like that. The housing programs didn't want to deal with people because I was considered a high level person. So if I was someone who had been in trouble once or been arrested for a misdemeanor or something, well, there's several programs for people like that. They seem to embrace people who are not as deeply involved in the or criminally in the justice impacted as much as I am. So once you reach a certain level in the criminal justice system, you become a write-off. You become a risk factor for every program and for everything. So when it comes to resources and assistance, no program wants to mess with you because you're considered a high level. And most of the programs that center around assisting people are built on that. I spent years looking for a program to get into that would allow me to I didn't ask for just put a roof over my head. You know, you don't even need to feed me. I'll do all of that. Just give me a stable place to get on my feet from was all that I needed. But out of all the programs that were available, none assisted people in my position. So once you cross the lines and become state prisoner, you're done. You become that write-off. So now here I am, have changed my mindset, have said no more of this, no more of that. And now I'm sitting out here starving and homeless. And now I'm saying, you know, shame on me for throwing away all of my methods of survival and putting my trust in a system that could really care less about. This is the system that they've been telling me, hey, straighten up your act, do the right thing, and everything's going to be all right. And that's not the way that it worked out. I seem to be rejected more. And I was frustrated with myself for changing my mindset, for feeling like there was no hope. Maybe I should have got out and started and went back to some of my homeboys and got some dope and start selling dope. I wouldn't be hungry right now. I would be somewhere right now, you know, and you contemplate and you start considering other things. And there were times in my life where I did reconsider my life in that way of going down what they considered the right path. And the right path to a lot of people is whatever works for them. The right path to a lot of us is doing what I do best, you know, and doing what I know how to do best. Survival mode is not a choice. Survival mode is something that you immediately go into when a situation changes. It's not as much of a choice as a lot of people feel that it is. It's like, I get hungry, I have no money, there's a store. You know, so I struggled with this for years and nothing. I got temporary housing sometime, I got jobs, but I worked at jobs that let me go after 6 months, jobs that let me go after a month. I even got a good job before and worked a couple years, got an apartment, stayed in that apartment and maintained it for like 2.5 years. And then the job was over, you know, the company closed down. Now I'm running to different jobs, you know, to maintain rent and everything. And I didn't stand a chance, you know, because even if I did get a job, no job, I'm not going to be able to work anywhere to where I'm going to be able to retire, to put in enough years to retire at my age. So I dedicated myself to, I joined All of Us or None, and I dedicated myself to find an opening and something to resolve homelessness for formerly incarcerated people and find some type of opening and category that we would qualify in, because there's so many people like me who struggle for the same amount of years, and some don't make it. A lot of us don't make it. A lot of those homicides that happen, you know, in homeless places, a lot of that stuff are people who have reached this certain level of hopelessness. And one morning they wake up at the sleeping bag and get out, and somebody comes and snatches and steals something from them. And that's it. You know, it just, they're like a high risk factor because we come from a life that doesn't, a lot of us don't push baskets, you know, we don't do homelessness like that. And a lot of people refuse to sleep on the ground or whatnot. So when a person like that becomes homeless, them being getting shelter normally comes at the expense of somebody else. You know, who has some money, it's like, you know, I got to hit a quick lick, man, to get in for the night. I lived like that for a long time, you know, to where I got to do something to get in for the night. So it, realizing that, it led me to become actively involved in activist work and to commit to finding housing for formerly incarcerated people, to more so save us and to help society as well, because a lot of the crime rate that occurs in each East Village downtown, if you access the homicide reports in East Village and downtown, you'll see that about 80% of those homicides are homeless people, either committing them or homeless people dying at the hands of other people. So as a result of that, I've decided to commit to that, because this time I made it, but I didn't make it. I wasn't rescued. I wasn't saved by any program that helped me. There never was a program really that helped me. I maintained for the first time of going through a struggle without resorting to crime. I just continuously said to myself, you know, I just got to make it. I've been rejected so many times for everything. Right when I thought I was getting ready to, something was going to happen, it didn't, you know, and I struggled with it for a long time. And it just, I mean, it just happened for me. And I mean, it's been like 20 years. People think, and I'm like somebody who just came home, or by the way, everything has happened for me, it would seem like I'm somebody who just came home like a couple of years ago. it's, it's been like 20 years, and that struggle has been that for 20 years. I know a lot of people who are not going to make it 20 years going through what I did. They're going to get in trouble, or somebody else is going to get in trouble, because you're coming from a lifestyle of gangs. In gang lifestyle, and mentality is like a proactive lifestyle. It kind of like says, I'm not going hungry for nobody. I'm not sleeping on the ground for nobody. We're the kind of people that's going to say, you know, I'm going to get some money to get a place tonight. I don't know where, you know, but I'm going to do it. So all the way around, I think that is very important to address homelessness, specifically for formerly incarcerated people who are valuable and an asset to the community if given the opportunity. I think it's time to stop the write-off with the formerly incarcerated people, specifically because many of our world leaders, especially in the Black community, have come from have been justice impacted in some type of way. Just imagine if Malcolm X was written off, you know, just imagine if Martin Luther King was written off, and Mandela and various other people who were impacted by the criminal justice system. I think it's time for us to stop being written off and to specifically focus on homelessness for formerly incarcerated people. Thank you.
All right. Wow. Mr. Howard, that was an absolute honor to hear from y'all. And I wish we were in person so I could say if we can everyone can give a round of applause because I appreciate that you're here today to share your story and that we could help elevate kind of what you've been through. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit about the initiatives that have been occurring at All of Us or None of Us? And can you share a little bit about the book you're writing?
Sure. And that's all of us or none. And
I
so a
apologize.
lot of people say all of us or none of us. It is actually all of us or none. And right now, as you know, all of us or none was most known for Ban the Box. And that was a campaign that we led some years ago called Ban the Box. And what Ban the Box did was it takes the box off of applications for housings and jobs that asks, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Or have you been to prison in the past years? And they specifically say prison. And this is another example of how the high risk factor comes into play. It doesn't say, have you ever been to jail? It's like, we don't care if you've been to jail, but if you've been to prison, now this is an issue. So now on these job applications, they're asking, have we been to prison? Because they're going to disqualify you. And then a lot of them say, well, we just want you to answer the question. It doesn't mean you're disqualified. You hear that all the time and things. Oh, this doesn't mean that you won't get hired. Doesn't mean you won't get the apartment. It's just, you know, and so we banned the box and we led a campaign to ban the box, and we successfully did ban the box. Uh, as you know, as with other uh, 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 initiatives and things that come into play, you have to kind of watch them to make sure that people are actually abiding by them now, which is always, these are certain where these loopholes come into play, because you could ban the box, but then people are going through other type of measures. I mean, I just applied for the apartment that I'm in now, and I had to shut down all of my social media, because, if I go and apply for something, if they can't do the ban the box thing, then they're going to start looking up my personal life, seeing what I'm talking about, on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and they're going to get you that way. So there's loopholes and stuff. And that's why we have to, when we approach things, one thing that I noticed is that there's a lot of open ends to a lot of laws, and people are seeking quick fixes. And when you seek these quick fixes, you tend to overlook like consequences. It's like playing a game of chess. You can't just consider your move. You got to consider the next move that's going to happen after you do this. How are they going to respond to it? If you were in their shoes, how would you respond to it if you were fighting against it? And it leaves a lot of things open. So yeah, we did ban the box. We successfully did yes on Prop 17 last year for the election. So Prop 17 was to allow people on parole the right to vote, which we always felt like they should be able to vote because they're impacted by so many things that go on. So as a formerly incarcerated person, I was in isolation. I opened a place called Pelican Bay Prison, which is the most notorious prison in the state of California. And in some places nationwide, arguably the worst at that time. And a lot of things were going on there. And the governor is the person who runs the prisons and makes a lot of decisions, about us. And here I am sitting up impacted in a place that the governor makes decisions on, but I can't even vote for the governor. Suppose I want to vote for the governor, I can't vote. So you got millions of guys incarcerated who can't even vote. and can't make a decision on who would be the best governor. What governor has the best interest in mind for me, you know? But I can't vote. I'm eliminated from that process. So yes, on 17 last year, gave formerly incarcerated people and people on parole the right to vote. And that was something else that we did. Currently, right now, we're trying to abolish slavery in the prison system, or the involuntary servitude, because I was forced to work for 10 cents an hour. And it's reminiscence of slavery in itself. The prison industrial complex is built and ran off the blueprint of actual slavery. It goes off the blueprint. Everything that happens from beginning to end actually is blueprinted in actual slavery. Work for your freedom. But what they tell the public, he was released on good behavior. There's no such thing as good behavior. You can walk around in prison and show your teeth all day. You're not going to get out for smiling and doing in good behavior. You're going to get out if you work, only if you work. So you have to do something to keep that prison running. You have to work in the kitchen and feed people, and you do it for like 10 to 12 cents an hour. And the reason why you do it for that is because if they have to hire people to do it, they have to pay them probably about $35, $40 an hour. I mean, it includes hazard pay, just working around prisoners. That's like hazard pay. So the pay is going to go up, and it's going to cost a lot of money for them to do things. I mean, so they place emphasis on working. And every job within the system is done by prisoners. And it's done for, if you have a good job, I think the best job I had, I was making like 30 cents or 40 cents an hour. Now that's a damn good job, If you can make like $2 a day, that's like a good job in here, But if they had to hire somebody to do it, they would have to pay them like $30, $40 an hour, So everything's just it's profit. Everything's just for profit. So you could be on your best behavior, and they don't care. You could be mean. You can cuss out guards and walk around with a frown on your face, and they'll deal with that. As long as I'm working, they'll like that more than a smiling guy who refuses to work. So we're trying to abolish involuntary servitude right now. That's something that we just signed off on.
So, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Howard, I feel like you've given us all a lot to think about. I'm going to put the link to All of Us or None in the chat, and I invite everyone to go visit that. There's a lot of questions that we have. I'm gonna go transition
Sure.
and put the guest panelist on here. Erica is going to go ahead and bring them up.
Be of assistance and to move forward. Hopefully we can help other people that's on their way out of the system and try to push them forward through this transitional period.
Mr. Ed Little, if you.
Everyone, my name is Ed Little. I'm a policy advocate with Californians for Safety and Justice. And here in Sacramento, California, working in the state capitol to pass legislation that will positively impact the lives of people who are living with convictions in the state of California. Thank you.
I'm gonna ask if everyone could direct their audience questions to me, but I do have a few that I wrote down from the audience. This might be a question more for Antonio, but what do you see are some of the barriers that you work with for folks who are homeless as they're trying to re-enter into the system from the prison system?
Primarily those who were convicted of any type of drug offenses or any type of sex offenses are the ones who have the most problems finding housing right now. Even at the convention center, they only accept individuals that don't have any arson or any sex offenses. If a guy have a monitor on his leg early, they won't let them into the convention center for housing. And so right now we have numerous individuals who are released from custody who are right now homeless in Chula Vista, El Cajon, and here in San Diego as well. So that's the biggest barrier for those coming out. Unfortunately, they have a stop program with CDCR. So some people who are getting out are able to tap into that resource and receive housing for at least up to 7 months while they try to get back on their feet. So unfortunately, those housing don't provide anything other than shelter in terms of having somebody write a resume, job development, budgeting, these types of things that they're going to need once they're kicked out of this house. So, I mean, we have a long way to go in terms of solidifying a way for individuals who's coming out to be more productive and more successful during this transitional period.
I think this could be a question for everybody, but Curtis was talking a lot about being written off. What do you think are the challenges to minimizing the stigma when it comes to advocating for formerly incarcerated populations? And I can give that could be from anybody on the panel.
I'll jump in and start us off on that. I think one thing that we have to do is we have to remember to focus on changing the narrative. One of the challenges with this work, whether it's reforming the system or reforming situations outside of the system, if there is a such thing, is that we have to change the narrative about the people who are most impacted, about the people who live with convictions. And so, first of all, we have to highlight the humanity of people who are living with convictions, no matter what they may have done in the past. They are still human beings. And when we as advocates keep that in mind and remember that and lift that up and center that in our work and in our words as we talk about these issues, we will force those folks who are responsible for setting and making policy to change their narrative in the way that they talk about people who are living with convictions today in California. And so it's about forcefully changing the narrative and forcing others to comply with the new narrative, a new way of looking at all of us, which is as human beings.
Yeah, I like to chime in on what Mr. Little said. I'm a firm believer that everyone is redeemable, regardless of their commitment to this. And like I said, we need to change that narrative and look at people as human beings, get rid of the isms, the racism, the sexism, the favoritism. Once we get rid of the isms, I think we're on the road of recovery. Because like I said, we've done our time, and they shouldn't be punished once they get out for the time that they already served. And they need a fair chance. Now, the second chance, we talk about second chances. Let's actually give second chances. Let's get rid of, wipe the slate clean. You're a human being first and foremost. You're out here, you're trying to be successful. And let's deal with them on that level. Let's not deal with them on the past indiscretion or past bad decisions. So this people are redeemable. Let's go with that policy. Let's, try to help them move along forward.
Yeah, and that's 100% correct, and I wanted to allow Brother Little and Smith to chime in because I've already been speaking, but that is something that that I look at as to change the narrative, because people in society always highlights our past. If you see someone on TV get shot by the police, the first thing they're going to put up there is his past. If you see anything that happened wrong, they're going to throw the past up there. So whenever we do something that's good and that's right, we need to put that up there too. So we don't just need that past put up there. When something bad happens, we need to celebrate it. whenever something good is done, we need to let them know who we are.
Mr. Little, in 2020, there was a huge movement for racial justice. And I know you do a lot of work for advocacy and policy in Sacramento. Do you feel that while on the ground, a lot of attitudes have changed, do you feel that the attitudes of our leadership have changed to make policy changes and to be more willing to work together to help folks who in the justice system?
To be honest with you, not necessarily. I think the folks who are willing to work with us always had the kind of mindset to work with us. But even those elected officials, we have to push them, and we have to push them hard, because there is no way we would have the largest prison system in the country and the most punitive laws in the country if this was this bastion of democracy as they try to make it out to be. The reality is people are perfectly fine with having over 100,000 people incarcerated. People are perfectly fine with people coming out of prison and not having a place to lay their head or money in their pockets. And so the only thing that's going to change this system is demand. And we have to be very clear about what we want. And we have to be very clear about how we're going to accomplish the goals that we set as advocates. And most importantly, we have to eliminate the silos, and we have to work together. The only way that we are going to be successful in removing the barriers and the challenges that lie before us is working together as people who recognize one another's humanity.
Yes, sir. Mr. Robert Forte, can you join the panel? Looks like he's in the room now. I can direct this next question to him. And I know he can hear me, although he's not focused on the panel. He invited me to a conference that was saying that San Diego has actually the most deaths now in jail compared to everyone in California. Or this could be for anybody. Is there any speculation onto what that might be?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the whole question. Martin, could you recap one time, please?
There was a conference you invited me that was really interesting. It was about San Diego leads in prison death in prison deaths.
The conference is actually on right now, and it's actually more about San Diego County jail suicides and how San Diego County leads, even though we're not the largest, but we have the most deaths. And there's a panel discussion, and the discussion is going in a lot of different directions. But the real essence of this discussion is about why did the deaths exist, and how come inmates don't have access to mental health care or to possibly mental health practitioners 24 hours a day. And one of the things that that's problematic is that we're going to look at jail through different lenses. Curtis lens, because of my lived experience in the time I spent in prison. Like a few other people, I'll leave a name until they name themselves. But we look through different lenses, and our internal lens taught us something about that environment. Unfortunately, I've been in that environment where I've seen people kill themselves. I've had cellies try to kill themselves. And so that's a real problematic problem. And, being that it's a mental health issue on top of a correction issue, we've got a lot of work to do to adjust and to try to correct that. I'm kind of working on a couple of projects right now and trying to get the sheriff's department to agree to a suicide hotline, and we're looking at trying to get more practitioners into jail. And but all of this is politics from one set of lenses also. So we have challenges in front of us, but I think by the participation of the audience, the participation of the different organizations, and the community itself at large. I mean, because everybody knows somebody that's been impacted one way or another by the system. But to have somebody go into the system that hasn't been convicted yet, and for them not to even make it to court, and even if they did, the judge didn't sentence them to that issue, that ending. I didn't sentence you to die. I gave you 60 days. Now, for whatever mental health issue he couldn't handle, that he couldn't handle 60 days, God bless his heart. But at the same time, we're losing family members, we're losing friends, we're losing people that know people that are going and becoming incarcerated. And the majority of the time, I'm not going to say it's always the mentally ill that do it. Sometimes it's the guy that's going to jail for the very first time and he's made a mistake and he doesn't see a way out. He can't bail out. And then I don't want to make it a scary picture, but jail is a scary place for those that are in a position and don't know how to protect themselves, or don't know how, or when you're forced to click up with a group of people that you don't want to be around, but that's the only safe measure you have. There's more politics in jail than so I'll put it that way.
We received a statement based on what you said, Mr. Forte, and I'm just going to read it and anyone can comment on it. Someone said, he's making a powerful point that folks sometimes commit crime just to end up safely housed in jail. Unfortunately, what they most need is mental health care, jail isn't necessarily safer for them than the streets. So I've heard this before about how sometimes people feel like there is nothing for them out there because there's no housing, and when they leave prison, they go to the streets. And comment on that?
Yeah, I can. Definitely. Back in the 80s and 90s, I suffered a lot of reincarceration due to parole violations. That's where they made the big money from the parole violators who didn't commit crimes, but were sent back to prison for about 4 years in and out without committing crimes or breaking rules. Back then they had a thing where people who were homeless or on drugs, they called it being rescued. So when you came to prison, people said, oh man, you didn't get arrested, you got rescued. Being rescued meant that your situation on the streets was so critical that jail saved you or helped you. Jail has never helped no one. No one will ever be rescued going to jail. Nobody wants to go to jail. That's the wrong way to look at it. So this are what the people who want people to be locked up and who are for it, this is what they want you to say. They want you to believe that that jail is helping people because they're homeless and hungry to jail and get a meal and sleep. Don't ever trash that outlook, man. Everybody on this panel, don't ever believe that. This is what they're trying to get you to believe. No one wants to go. But at the time, they may not care. They just don't care, but they don't want to be there. It's like, I've had rough times out there on the streets. I've been on drugs. I've had rough times. I was a smoker, and busted, but when I got busted, it was like, oh, well, but they still had to come and find me. I still ran when they pulled up. It's still, if the cuffs would have been loose, I'd have probably tried to get out of them and escape or anything. but nobody wants to go to jail or prison. This is what they're saying after they fail us. When they fail us, this is their cop-out, is that they want to go. When they don't have a place for us to live, when we're homeless and we're hungry and they can't help us, and we do something desperate and end up in jail, then they go and collect all of these people saying, oh, I just wanted to go to jail. Oh, the man came and robbed the bank and said, I was tired. I just wanted to go to jail to go to sleep. They'll highlight all of that, but people don't look at the before about his situation. They failed him. What is he doing in a bank saying, I just wanted to go to sleep? How come they couldn't help him before this? That's failure on their part.
So, hey, Martin, I'm not going to challenge what he says because I actually believe he's absolutely right in regards to the way that the propaganda and the narrative is used. But what I will say is this, that our system, as your title goes from prison to homelessness, well, we all know where it starts. And it's that issue with the pipeline and the K through 12 children. And so our system is conditioning children to accept incarceration as an alternative. And as long as we can, and the conditioning is what you call learned behavior. So your environment, you are stuck in that environment with this learned behavior. And that behavior, you start to get to a point, and especially if you have mental illness, especially if you're impacted by trauma, you're going to be conditioned to believe that that environment is good enough for you and that you don't have to do any better than that because they're going to feed you, clothe you, and then that condition also becomes dysfunctional. I ain't got to pay any bills. So that environment has dehumanized you enough to allow you to lower your standards to a level where you don't care anymore. So yeah, Curtis is right about that part. Nobody wants to go, and that's a fact. You get a little comfortable once you're there because you're stuck. But in reality, no, nobody wants to go to jail. Nobody wants to get in the police car. Nobody wants to go to prison. But as long as we keep allowing our children to go into the juvenile system and they are conditioned and impacted by trauma, see, there's something that's going on that a lot of people are naive. And this is the reality. We have individuals, we take an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, or let's just say 10 or 11, and we put him in a cell in juvenile hall or in an environment in juvenile hall. And then that child becomes assaulted. He made a mistake to get him there, but he's assaulted there. And so that child becomes another victim, and that trauma is going to impact him for the rest of his life. But that's not the end of the story. His survival in that environment makes him become a predator also. So he goes from being the victim to the predator, to the victim to the predator. That learned behavior is like a TV episode and it never goes away. That child is stuck in that mindset and his development stops at that age when the trauma level becomes so high, develop social. And then when he becomes an adult, his reaction to anything automatically leads him to rage, anger, and being the predator again. So we have people trapped in this system, and the system is designed to create them, to condition them to stay.
So very quickly, I'm gonna ask. We have some more questions, but Ed or Antonio, did you want to jump in on any of this? Because so we have this question. I kind of want to pass it on to the whole team here. What do you think rehabilitation in a society should look like? And maybe Ed, we could pass it on to you, and you could tie that into whatever reforms you think are necessary.
Thank you. I appreciate how you frame that question. it gives me an opportunity to kind of plug some of the policies we're promoting right now. We have a bill right now, SB 731. We're actually partnering with legal services for prisoners with children, or all of us or none, on this bill. This bill is to sunset criminal convictions in the state of California. And so basically, what we want to do with this policy is to say at some point, the punishment has to end. If an individual has served their time in prison and an individual has completed probation or parole, at some point, that sentence, that punishment that hovers over an individual's head has to end. In the state of California, the state keeps your records until you are 100 years old. That means the state of California has no intention whatsoever for you to ever be truly free and to ever live a full quality of life. And so with this legislation, we're saying 100 years is unacceptable. And to your question about rehabilitation quickly, if an individual has been incarcerated and deemed worthy of being released and completed probation and parole and have demonstrated that they're not going back to prison, that's demonstration of rehabilitation enough. Now, the society, the state has to demonstrate that they are willing to give an individual a chance to get a job, find a place to live, have some money in their pocket, and to be able to provide for themselves and their family. That's what we need. We need to get away from these punitive policies that continue to punish people long after they've served their time. Now, I don't want to go on too long because I know there are other folks who want to chime in, but if you are interested in supporting this policy, I encourage you to look it up. It's SB 731, and feel free to reach out to me. We would love to have your organization come on as supporters of this very, very important legislation. Thank you.
There are a lot of questions, and there were some technical difficulties. For the panel, so it'd be okay if we just extended this by 10 minutes. Would that be okay with everyone? Yeah, I know it's late and we all have jobs, but Antonia, I kind of want to throw this question at you. And Curtis was talking about the relationship he had with his parole officer. Why is that so messed up? Why is it that sometimes it feels like parole officers aren't really helping and they're more against the person? I'll go ahead and let you answer that.
Okay, that's an easy question. It's a good question, but it's an easy one to answer. Most of the parole agents that you have out here today were former correctional officers, and they had the same mentality they had inside, they got it outside. And they feel that you're useless, you're worthless, and you need to be back in the cage. So they do very little to assist you in any kind of way. And in my dealing with parole agents, and in my capacity as my job, is to try to be a mediator between them and the guys who I'm working with. Unfortunately, these officers, and I still call them, I don't call them agents, I call them officers, they refuse to give it. They want an individual to come to shoot a visit to the parole office. They won't give them bus passes to get there. So how are they gonna get there? Then they want to violate them for not showing up for their appointments. You know, so I mean, it's a little bitty things. You know, they want, anytime they get a chance, technical violation like Mr. Curtis exists. You know what I mean? Especially a guy who a lifer is. He go back. He's going back facing that life sentence. He's not going back for a 14-day dry out or flash incarceration. He's going back to finish that life sentence. You know, and it's doubly difficult for individuals coming out after serving a life and being homeless, because now he's out there in the element, and if he's around any kind of drugs or weapon or anything, he can be around it and not have his hands on it, but because he's around it, it is his. They're gonna give it to him. He might not have no fingerprints or DNA on it, but that's his. And he's going back to the penitentiary. So, and working with parole agents is really difficult because, like I say, you have some that are very good, you know what I mean, that are actually doing their job and trying to assist individuals and staying out and being successful, but you have a majority, and I hate to say this, you got a majority of them that have that mentality of being prison guards and want to just, like everybody else, write you up and throw you back in the cage.
I have a question in the chat for Mr. Little. Someone was asking about, so it seems like there were a lot of different ideas about reform, and one of them was about reducing the funding to police, and another one was about abolishing the police. Can you speak on that, those two choices, and what do you think is necessary for us to really create a system that is not discriminating against races, and a system that's fair, and a system that allows people, once they leave, to reintegrate into society?
That is an important question right now that we're dealing with in our society. And I think both approaches are correct. And what I mean by that is, and I'm going to start with the reform approach and then deal with the abolish approach. The reform approach has to deal with the reality that we have police today, and police are killing people today, and the police are locking people up and setting people up and doing all manner of things. And we have to deal with those issues today because it's a reality today. And so on the flip side, if the goal is to abolish the police, we have to work towards that in lockstep as we are reforming what we have before us now until we get to the goal of eliminating that. But while we're working on abolishing the police, we have to figure out what do we want our world to look like tomorrow? And so we have to be creative about thinking about ways to address conflict and think about safety in our community in ways that don't include the police. And finally, I'll say this, as it relates to reform and defunding the police, if you will, all of the things that we need in our communities to keep us safe, to keep us healthy, to educate our children, these are the things that these resources should be going towards. And the only way that those resources will be shifted from a punitive law enforcement system to one where is centered around health and safety is we have to demand it. And we have to push for this each and every day. And if we understand that it is up to us whether or not we abolish the police, and it is up to us whether or not we defund the police or redirect those resources into a shared safety narrative, then we will realize that we have to come together to advance this idea. But what we can't do is we can't fight amongst each other saying that the reformers don't know what they're talking about, or the people who are trying to abolish the police are being unrealistic. We have to work together because we all want the same thing. We want safety, and we don't want our people to be killed in the street. And so if we can move forward with what we all want, this shared idea of shared safety, then we can accomplish the goals that we have before us.
I think that was very beautifully said. Thank you, sir. Does anyone from the panel want to jump in on that? I'll go to the next.
Yeah, I think to involve more justice impacted people in leading this. I think that you can't fix anything without the people who are actually directly impacted and involved. If you create a drug program, then the counselors need to be former users. If you want to abolish the police in the system, then the people who are leading the think tanks have to be former gang members and formerly incarcerated people. You have to get us, you have to hire us, you have to pay us so that we don't have other things to deal with, to where we can focus and actually invest our time and mental energies into making these things happen, to where I don't have to let you go because I have to go and figure out how I'm gonna pay rent. When I was incarcerated, it was a brother who was a real good friend of mine. He started, not Suge Knight, his name is Michael Harris. He's actually the one who started Death Row Records. And he and him and I were talking, and he wanted to form an organization on the streets of formerly incarcerated people. Again, he set it up just the same way he did Death Row Records. He funded it from the prison. And he was saying that the first thing he was going to do was get all people who were justice impacted to lead the way. But he said, but first of all, he had to take a realistic look at it and say, I have to pull them out of survival mode in order to make this happen. In order to get you, Kurt, to go and do these things, you can't worry about rent. You can't worry about where you're going to eat or how you're going to eat. So the system needs to engage us more. They need to ask our advice more. They need to make decisions. They can't make decisions without us, that are about us, you know? That's why the voices of all of us are none is so important, because we don't give up the mic to anyone in making decisions about us without us. Involve us.
Absolutely, I concur. We have to sit at the table. You know, decisions gonna be made. We definitely have to be at the table for those decisions. As far as defunding the police, yeah, that's one of those topics that, you know, it looks good on paper, it looks good in the news, you know, and I think that has to start not so much defunding, but it has to start with training. It has to start with psychological analyzations of the individuals who are the police officers, and find out where their heads at. Because a lot of these guys, just like in the military, they have this mentality of, you know, I mean, everybody else is a target. You know, if you're not in the military, you're not a part of this program, then you're a target. You know, and the same thing with the police. If you're not a part of the police department, then you I think we all at some point understand being a suspect. You know, being born black, you're a suspect, period. You know, so I think it starts with training, it starts with getting ourselves inside the police officers, in the heads, getting to those meetings and being at that table. So when they make the decisions, we can raise our hand and say, no, that ain't gonna work. We don't like that. That's not gonna work. Here's an alternative we can look at. Let's look at this decision. Look at something else we can do in order to keep lives alive. So, nobody get out of life alive, but let's keep it going real. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm tired of our people getting killed. It's just ridiculous. I'm tired. We need to get inside the police officers' mind. We need to get inside the departments, and we need to have a voice there.
For me, myself, I have to concur with the rest of the panel, but my belief system is set up like this. We live in a society of have and have nots. And I don't know how we're going to get rid of that mindset and that level of poison that one part of society wants to have and they want the other part of society not to have. That is one of the main problems that actually fuels this, because here we have a generation of children, and yes, I go back to the children because 20 years is not a long time. So if we take a child that's 7 years old and in 20 years from now he's 27, and the amount of money and the amount of energy and the amount that it costs to put him in a juvenile hall bed or all those things is more or less put back into that family instead. That child is not going to be affected by so many elements of trauma. He's not going to be affected by all the poverty. He's not going to be affected by these things. And then as time goes on, yes, it is a time issue. Those cycles will be broken. But we can't break those cycles when we still have haves and have-nots. And as far as defunding the police, well, Antonio said something that I agree with, that we need to come up with a higher level of psychological testing. You know, all police should take lie detector tests. We need to know whether you are biased, racist, hateful, whatever your idiosyncrasy is, we need to know it before you take that job. Because you knew the job was tough when you took it, but all of a sudden, because he got a butter knife, you still want to shoot him instead of wound him. So psychological evaluations for police officers, for law enforcement, and as we just learned from our political, whatever we want to call whatever happened on that day, we learned there are individuals that truly believe that a certain part of society and a certain part of our ethnic community shouldn't exist and shouldn't have any rights that still exist. So we've got a lot of problems to work on. And even though the statements that the panel has made, they're all accurate, because there's more than there's many elements to this. And we have to approach all the elements, but the strongest element is being able to break the cycle that the children are experiencing, so they don't grow up and become these same people that we're dealing with today.
I have to ask one last question. I know we're over time. I just want to mention, just no, we've gone over time, but everyone is still here, and we had technical difficulties, and we had 35 out of whatever we had come back. So it means that this conversation matters, and it means that people are engaged. The last question I have is just to kind of close this out. I personally feel really inspired. I'm sure a lot of people here feel inspired and feel engaged and feel like there's a lot we want to do. What do y'all think is the call to action for us, so that we don't get disengaged? So that what is it something that we can do to make sure that this doesn't just become a conversation? And maybe we can start with Mr. Little.
I think we have to kind of keep these kind of conversations going. It's about sharing knowledge and information with one another, so that we are aware of the issues that affect all of us, and we share solutions to those problems that affect all of us. We constantly work to shift the narrative. That's something that we all can do in our interpersonal relationships, in our work, and advocacy for change. I think that it's very important to realize that no one is going to save us, that we have to save ourselves. No one is coming to save us, particularly the elected officials that we look to. If the change that we want, we have to make it happen. And the policies that I work on with my organization, again, SB 731 is a policy to get all of us free. It is a policy designed to eliminate those barriers, those over 4,000 barriers that impact people who live with convictions in the state of California. Another bill that I'm working on that I think is important, that people might be interested in, is SB 299. That is the equal access for victims of police violence. This is a piece of legislation that creates an opportunity for people who have been harmed by the police or killed by the police. It makes their families eligible to receive victims' compensation. And so an individual can get help with burial, can get help with counseling, can get help with a number of different areas through this legislation. It's interesting, and I'll wrap up with this. Historically, people who were killed or victimized by police were not eligible for victims' compensation. And so we are pushing right now with SB 299 to make people who are victims of police violence eligible, and their families, for victims' compensation. So I'll leave you with that. And again, my organization is Californians for Safety and Justice. Please go to our website, check out information, and please get involved. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say get involved. And I would specifically get involved with formerly incarcerated groups. The reason being is because we're like it's like Black Lives Matter on a whole different level of racism, because we suffer racism as formerly incarcerated people on an entirely different level than regular racism. So you even have Black people who don't like us because we're formerly incarcerated. So we suffer racist and stereotyping from everyone. So we have our own category of racism that applies to us. So get involved, not just in activism, but get involved with formerly incarcerated people to help us. I'm the director of All of Us Are None San Diego. I'm putting my email in here. I will invite anyone on this panel to attend our meetings. You can attend our meetings. You can actually be a member of All of Us Are None, because we don't have exclusive membership. Most members of All of Us Are None do something else. Everybody does something else. The membership is not exclusive. So join and become involved in any organization that involves formerly incarcerated people. Start doing some of that work so that you can understand us more and what we need more. So I'm going to put my email in here. Anybody can just shoot me an email and I'll invite you to one of our meetings if you just want to sit in or get involved in something. We have plenty of work to do. Thank you.
Well, if I had the authority and I had the power, I'm still maybe not the age group that we talked about before, but I look at all these young people on this Zoom, on this call, and I'm sure quite a few of you guys are social service majors and criminal justice majors and of all types. And I really believe in fostering development in people, supporting people through their cause and their goals, and building a team, building a collaborative in a community that we know who's going to be running for Congress. We know who's going to be running for mayor. We know who's going to be on the city council because we put them there. That is a form of change. The brother, Mr. Little, mentioned a couple of Senate bills. You know, Martin, I know you just got one in your inbox because I just got it about Assembly Bill 328, the reentry housing bill. I'm going to read it tonight. And then the reentry roundtable does have the sunset bill also, and we're going to be supporting that. But the truth is in all you young people, that's where the truth is. Because either you're going to look at something and know that it's wrong and do something about it, or you're going to look at something and you're going to play dumb and you're going to let it go. You're going to let it go by, and you're going to keep letting it go by until it affects you personally. And then you're going to be like, damn, it's too late because I let this go by 4 or 5 times. When you can impact and make a change today. Just with your mindset, Eve, what you can make a change to all this, and we have to start somewhere. So we're investing in each other, supporting each other in each other's goals and dreams, investing in our youth, and it shouldn't matter what color they are. It shouldn't matter. You know, there's something that goes on in the juvenile system, and it makes you wonder, you know, how can they charge a child as an adult when he is not culpable? How come a child can be traumatized and not treated, and public safety not have to take responsibility for it? How can these things exist in our society today? Do you know the United States has the highest conviction rate in the world out of all the countries, but we're supposed to be the most civilized country? How can that be? So for me, the change is in you. The change is in all of us. But it really starts with the youth. It starts with people, and Greta and Julia and Rose. It starts with you guys. That's how I feel about it.
And Mr. Smith, let's close us out, sir.
All right, I got to agree with the panel as it lay out there. It is the youth, man, and it is the continual conversation on this topic. It's like all you young kids, man. And I can say young kids because I'm old, but it's up to you guys. You guys are going to make the final decision. You guys are the future, and you guys are going to decide which way we go with this thing. Whether we're going to defund the police, we're going to train them. It's up to you guys. You know what I mean? I mean, for the first time in my life, I voted this year as an ex-felon. I was able to vote. I'm off parole, and I made my choices. And so, I mean, voting is powerful. And I hope you all take this thing seriously, man, and let's move forward because this country needs help, and it needs your help. So I appreciate being here, and I thank you guys for letting me join this panel. And all you guys, hey, man, I love you, man, and we're going to get some things done, I believe. All right, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Lola, I'll be hitting you guys up. Don't worry about it. I got you.
All right. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, well, thank you so much for everyone that was here. I feel really honored to have listened to this conversation, honestly. Yeah, everyone has your contacts. So I hope proper networking can be done, but I appreciate everyone also who is in this space. Well, that's it. Have a great night. I hope everyone is happy and joyful and something comes out of this. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Be safe. Be safe.
Thank you, everyone. That was really insightful.